High expectations, I don't think I really need to go into. It's important for all pupils, but in a sense it's possibly more important because the parents may not have very many expectations of outcomes from school. So the school has sort of to be in loco parentis. Again, that was part of the role of traveller education services, to try and encourage kids to have aspirations and to hang on in with them. Flexibility, there was a nice image that was in Derrington and Kendall's book, which was Willows and Oaks. And basically, the kids seem to do better in schools which are flexible, although a lot of schools talked about the issues like behaviour policies, having simple, clear policies, and then having a degree of flexibility if certain kids weren't able to meet all the requirements of that policy from day one. Access and inclusion is the simple things like dealing with transport, getting kids to school, transport, after school clubs, homework clubs, school uniform, all those things which solve the problems which could lead to kids disengaging from education. And schools did go a long way to kind of make sure they solve those problems. So this is the summary, I think. Yeah. Inclusive schools that reach out to parents, I know you can read it, identified members of staff to liaise so parents can get in touch very easily when they have issues, and likewise schools know that the person who is contacting them is someone who isn't going to be hostile. Relationship building between schools and communities certainly works, but more needs to be done on that. And the personalised, flexible curriculum with vocational elements. I won't talk for long, but we mentioned scripts, and it was these statements, and I think what happens is going into schools for a lot of traveller parents is quite a threatening experience. And they have certain lines, rather like politicians do, 13 years of Tory Labour misrule, whatever. They have these set lines which are meant to be conversation stoppers. I don't want to debate this. So our kids don't go to secondary school. But there's another one which is equally available, is times are changing and our kids need an education. But it's equally kind of, they're not cliches, but they are, you hear almost the same form of words from different groups of parents. And it's like they've decided this is the term. Because I think some parents who send their kids to secondary school get criticism from other families. So having their times are changing, our kids need an education, is the way of stopping community members' conversation in its tracks. Just as our kids don't go to secondary school, we don't want our kids having sex education, we don't want them using drugs, are kind of stereotypical responses. And we felt very, very strongly that that's something that schools or traveller education services need to work through, because we actually need a dialogue. We don't need entrenched political positions. Clear communication, I think, is very important. I think schools do need to be aware of that not all parents are literate. Just having everything in an agreement which parents are expected to sign does not mean you have an agreement with the parents. So clear communication, often quite simple policies, schools recommended. Use of role models, members from the community involved, both in the school and in community as a whole. And a recognition that if children are unhappy, it's just not going to work. They were mentioned in in most situations, and very much in a positive way. They weren't expected. They were expected to do a different job from the schools, which was a difference. The government policy was, you know, we all need to focus on achievement, and the schools were saying, we'll focus on achievement. We need them to keep the parents on side. We need, you know, that sort. We need them to liaise with other agencies, those sorts of things. Probably TAs were the most common, although we also came with TAs who were going on to do GTP. So, and a lot of those things, it was quite good, where often travel education services built the links initially, so they would identify people who could work in the schools from the communities. But in some cases, because it's actually fairly stressful, because you get flack from both sides. So sometimes people would actually move beyond working with their own communities, which, as far as I'm concerned, is the ideal, because you don't want black people working with black kids. You actually want a kind of integrated teaching force and an integrated, you know, classroom. So that's what we would aim for, and I would say that does happen. And there was a very nice situation in an East London school where a young Roma guy, he actually went to college to try and do music. He was very musical, but it didn't work. It didn't work out, and he went back to the school. This school was quite interesting because it looked like they put all their priorities on employing people, because it was fairly shabby, but they had a lot of good people and good relationships. So he went back to the school and said, any chance me being employed to work with my own community? And the school said yes, and he started working with his own community, and then they realized that he was very good at playing the guitar. And in the end, he started working with the GCSE O-level group as a guitar tutor. So that was, I mean, that was just a perfect example of how that would work. And I mean, just on the positive side, I'm a trustee of the Irish Travellers Movement, and we had a conference last week, and we had one young woman who's about to start training as a barrister, one young woman who's doing youth and community work at Coventry, one of the universities in Coventry, and I can't. There were others, but basically, it's a tiny number, but they are beginning to appear. The other thing is we do get a reverse thing. So another of my trustees in the Irish Travellers Movement, her mother was an Irish traveller. She's very senior in a local authority now, but she's now kind of come back to her community. For a whole period, she probably was below the radar, but now she's actually got the status, got the recognition, and so that it, you know, she chaired our conference, and you just begin to feel, yeah, this is the way that the role models can appear. Well, I suppose early years, you know, you have the normal thing that parents staying on with children, but I think there's a lack of confidence in their ability to be able to support their children in education, and they certainly don't want to try and do that in a kind of public setting. So I think most traveller parents would feel quite exposed and vulnerable, really, trying to support their children in class. And those who are educated, I think they probably would be more inclined to do it.